Hey YouTube, this is City Prepping. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Bluetti MaxOak 1500 solar generator. This is a product that's been on the market for a while and I've been playing around with it recently. And I have to say, I'm thoroughly impressed with the performance, how much it can output, and the price point. Now, if you follow my channel long enough, you know I enjoy doing reviews of solar generators, and it always amazes me the different products that are coming on the market. They're getting better and better. And I live here in Southern Cal. I've got nothing but sun. As long as I have solar panels, I can hook up a device like this, and if there's an emergency, maybe an earthquake or some other type of event where the power goes down and I need a reliable source of power without being tied to a finite fuel source like gasoline or propane, having a device like this really makes sense. So what we'll do in this video is we'll look at the specs, we'll put it under some loads and see how it performs, we'll look at the competition on the market, and we'll talk about how something like this compares to a traditional gas generator. So stick around. So before we get into the specifics of the specs, let me just jump to the point that a lot of people ask right off the bat: what is the price? With the coupon codes that I'll post in the description section below, and also I'll pin a comment, you can get it down to about $1,100 on Amazon, which we'll talk about as a very competitive price point. So let's just go ahead and jump into the specs right now. Let's run through the front panel to begin with. What we've got here, and I'm going to bring this camera in a little closer. All right, on the front of this, you can see you've got DC on, you've got AC on, you've got, here, let me hold that down a little more. You've got your different AC options on the back, and we'll look at that in a second. But on the front, you've got DC, so we'll go ahead and run to the front. We've got 4 high amperage USB ports right here. We've got a USB-C port, which you can plug into a laptop and power that, which is a pretty neat feature. You've got an input port right here at the top. This is where you actually charge it, where you'll plug it into your solar panels and to your actual wall unit, and we'll look at that in just a second. As far as the solar panels go, you can actually charge this device with up to 500 watts of solar panels, which is a pretty decent amount. And on solar, it takes roughly 3.5 to 4 hours, depending on the amount of sun you have, to charge this from it being completely empty. And with a wall charger that you can plug into your typical wall socket at home with this, the power charger here, you're looking at about 10 hours. So it actually charges faster with the solar panels. Now, it's got a built-in MPPT charge controller. Comes with 1 PV solar charging cable. And I'll show you this. You can actually plug this into your traditional solar panels. They do have a car charge option. You have to buy that separately. As far as the LCD screen, you can monitor the remaining capacity. You can look at how much is charging whenever you plug it in watts. You can see how much the DC and AC are outputting whenever you have it charged into something. And if there's any kind of issues, it will show a error code, and you can read that here, and it has a little book that comes with it that explains the errors. Then down here you have your DC port for a traditional, like a cigarette plug-in, that you can power certain type of devices that have that type of charging unit. So let's flip it around, we'll look at the back. So here we have the back panel. Anytime you charge it or plug it in, you'll hear this fan kick on just whenever the batteries get warm, or anytime you're plugging something in that's pulling a lot and the batteries warm up, again, this fan will kick on. And then down here, you've got your 2 AC 110 plugins. You can use up to a maximum of 1,000 watts. And then you've got AC Pure Sine. It's a clean power output for sensitive devices. So the device itself is actually 1,500 watt hours. Now, the batteries on this are LG lithium-ion battery cell technology, so pretty nice technology there. It's got a battery management system to protect from overvoltage, undercurrent, short circuit, temperature control, just other basic safeguards. As far as the size go, it's actually 14.6 inches by 6.5 by 14.4. So it's pretty compact, and it comes in at weighing 37.9 pounds, or essentially 38 pounds. So while it's a pretty good size, it is still pretty portable. Whenever I discuss a solar generator on my channel, the question always comes up is, how does it stack up against a gas generator, something like a Honda EU 2000? To answer that, if you want, I'll post a link up in the cards above. I'll have a more in-depth video that goes into a lot more detail about that. But I'll give you some of the main points that I really enjoy about solar generators over a traditional gas generator. The first one is OPSEC. OPSEC simply stands for operational security. If there's a prolonged grid down scenario where power may not be coming back for several weeks, if you're running a gas generator and you have enough fuel to run it that long, as soon as people either hear it or smell it, they're going to know you have power. You have something they may want. And you may not want that attention if people are beginning to get desperate. With a solar generator, as long as I've got a solar panel array set up in my backyard, Obviously, it doesn't produce any noise, and it's obviously quiet. So now I'm able to power devices that are critical that I may need, and I don't have to worry about bringing attention to myself that I don't want. The other thing, and probably the most important selling point to me when you look at a solar generator, is you have effectively an infinite source of power. I live here in Southern California. I've got nothing but sun all the time. And so having the ability to plug this into, again, 500 watts of solar panels, I can power it. Now, I do realize this is not as powerful as a gas generator. But with a gas generator, once you've gone through your fuel, that's it. Unless you can have some way to replenish it, it's basically a 50-pound paperweight after that. Now, again, if you live in a suburban or an urban area, storing large amounts of gasoline is a liability. It's dangerous. You're not going to be storing hundreds and hundreds of gallons of fuel in your garage. If you do, then yeah, that could be dangerous. With this one, again, I don't have to deal with that. And probably the main third selling point for me is maintenance. You don't have to maintain these. You plug them in from time to time, but with a gas generator, obviously you got to stay on top of it, change out the filters. You've got to change out the oil, make sure the carburetor is good. There's a lot of things that go into a gas generator. I just don't have to deal with a solar generator. Now, as these have been on the market for a long time, solar generators are becoming common. A few years ago, they would average about $1,800 for a unit, comparable to this, maybe $2,000. Now you're seeing them drop in price, again, something like this for about $1,100. Again, a Honda EU 2000 comes in at almost a comparable price point. And again, it just depends on your application. This channel focuses on emergency preparedness, so I like this. If I were looking at something I just need a lot of power, let's say to power my RV, you might want to look at a gas generator. I prefer my gas generator when I take my RV out. But again, this is definitely an option that you might want to consider if you're looking from the emergency preparedness perspective.
So what I decided to do was to test out the solar generator on different devices that I knew would draw a lot of power at a given time. First device I tested was just a hot water heater, kind of like a tea kettle, electric one that heats up water. I knew that it would draw a lot of power, a lot of watts whenever I plugged it in. Sure enough, it did. It actually went over the continuous amount of power that this solar generator will allow. This unit allows 1,000 watts continuous. What does that mean? If you go over 1,000 watts for a prolonged period of time, say for I think about 30, 40 seconds or so, it'll shut off and it'll throw an error code. And sure enough, the solar generator did that. This particular tea kettle was pulling about 1,150 watts, so I knew that it would trip out the solar generator, and sure enough, it did. So I decided to do a second test with a very similar device that I knew, again, would draw a lot of power, just an electric heater. And same thing, it was drawing about 1,140 watts. And again, this device is rated for 1,000 watts continuous, so same exact results. It tripped it out after a period of time, not very long. And again, I just found the limitations of this device. So next, what I decided to do is test out a few devices that I knew would be under 1,000, but still draw a lot. The first device I tested out was an electric chainsaw. It was drawing about consistently 950 watts. And the solar generator was able to run that for a prolonged period of time with no issues. It just continued to run because, again, we're right under that threshold of 1,000. I was at 950, so I was close, but it didn't give it an issue. It just continued to power. So I did the same exact thing again with a electric blower. Again, the whole point of these exercises is to find where the limit is. I realize if there's an emergency, people don't need to operate an electric blower. But again, I was just trying to see how far I could push this particular solar generator right under that threshold of 1,000 watts continuous before it would trip off. And again, in this case, I was drawing a little under 1,000, I think around 950. Same thing, it was able to power this device for a pretty long period of time. I let it sit there for about 4 or 5 minutes at 950 watts, and it powered it without an issue. So let's talk practical terms. What are things that you would actually need a solar generator for to power that's probably going to be important to you? A lot of people have diabetes and they need to be able to keep their insulin cold. So having that option of keeping your insulin available, that it doesn't go bad, for some people that quite literally could be the difference between life or death. Some people rely on devices like CPAP machine. Again, you would be able to power something like this without any issue. One thing that I know for me is important is to be able to run a small refrigerator, something like an 18 cubic foot refrigerator that is kind of a small size refrigerator. Device like this, a solar generator, can power this for a pretty prolonged period of time even without a charge. And then what's important to me is, again, if there's an emergency and there's not a power source for a long period of time, having things that I can charge like my flashlights, cell phone devices, which we've all become very, very reliant upon. Things like a ham radio where I can communicate with people from a far distance, or even a two-way radio like a walkie-talkie. So again, you have to think about the solar generator from the perspective of it's not going to power a lot, but it can power very important things too.
So how does this particular product stack up against the competition on the market? What we'll do is we'll look from left to right at the Energy Apex, the EcoFlow Delta in the middle, and then the Bluetti Max Oak on the far right. So how do these actually compare? So let's start with the first one, weight. On the left, we have the Apex at 25 pounds, the EcoFlow Delta at 30 pounds, and then the Bluetti at 30 pounds. So between the three of them, the lightest is the Energy Apex. As far as AC charge time from a wall socket, the Energy Apex comes in at 3 hours, the EcoFlow Delta at 1.7 hours, and then the Bluetti at 10 hours. So the winner there is the EcoFlow Delta. It has a really, really fast charge time. And I've done a separate video on, by the way, on these other two products I'll post links to in the cards up above. As far as the max solar input, as far as how much solar panels you can hook up to it, again, from left to right, the Energy Apex comes in at 500 watts, EcoFlow Delta at 400 watts, and then the Bluetti at 500 watts. So I can't really say there's a clear winner there because the Bluetti and the Energy Apex are more or less the same on that one. As far as expandability, can you add on either a new battery or expand the battery, to make it, to be able to draw more power out of it? So let's talk about that. Again, on the left, we have the Apex. And if you notice, there's two little points of contact on the side. And again, I've done videos on this if you want to go and study it. Effectively, it allows you to hook up to either lithium batteries or DC batteries that allow you to expand out more or less an infinite power source, a backup battery bank. Now, the EcoFlow Delta in the middle, you can actually hook it up to another EcoFlow Delta. They do sell them together in pairs at a little reduced price. And I actually have one. I'll be doing some videos on that shortly, hooking it up. But the Bluetti, you cannot expand it out. It's just one unit and that's it. You can't hook it up to another Bluetti or another power source or another battery. As far as charge cycles, how many times can you charge it? Again, left to right, the Apex on the manufacturer's website, they say 2,000 times. The EcoFlow, they say 800 times. And I can't find any documentation on the Bluetti. Now, as far as the battery size goes, again, left to right, Energy Apex comes in at 1,100 watt hours, the EcoFlow Delta at 1,300 watt hours, and then the Bluetti comes in at 1,500 watt hours. So the clear winner out of those three is the Bluetti. It's going to pack the most punch as far as how much you can actually get as far as a backup power source out of it. As far as continuous and max output at the inverter, Energy Apex, you can get about 500 continuous out of that. The EcoFlow comes in at about 1,800 continuous watt, and then the Bluetti at 1,000. Now, as far as max output, how much can you effectively do a max or a spike at any given time? Again, left and right, the Energy Apex comes in at 3,000, the EcoFlow at 3,300, and honestly, I couldn't find any information on the Bluetti. I didn't find any documentation online that states it, so if I were to have to guess, I'd probably put it close to the other two units. It's not uncommon to get a solid spike of around 3,000, but it won't last long. It's not continuous. All right, again, left to right price. The Energy Apex comes in at $1,250. The EcoFlow Delta at $11.99, and then with the coupons that I'll post below, the Bluetti comes in at effectively $1,100 before tax. So between the three, the Bluetti is the cheapest. Hopefully this video gave you enough information to help you determine whether this particular unit is the right fit for you. There's a lot of different solar generators that are coming on the market, and they're increasingly becoming better, cheaper, and just, you're getting more and more options as time goes by. Overall, compared to a lot of the different units that I've reviewed, this one's definitely a strong contender. The only thing that I would say that I don't like about it, compared to my two favorites at the moment, which are the Energy Apex and the EcoFlow Delta, is you can't expand this unit out. Pretty much that's all you get is 1,500 watt hours. To some, that may not be an issue to be able to expand out. They may never see a use for that, and that's okay. For those that, like this channel focuses on a potential long-term grid down situation and you want to be able to store more power during the day when you actually have sunlight because it may be critical for you for survival, I'd like to have that option of expandability, and again, this one just doesn't have it. Otherwise, there's been a lot of other YouTubers that have done reviews on this. Some channels that specifically, that's all they do is solar generators. And this one seems to be a pretty strong contender on their channels. They've really enjoyed it. I know Will Prowse has done a review on this, and he has a lot of good stuff to say about it. So I think it really stands out in that regards. So if you have any questions, comments, feedback, post that in the comments section down below. Again, I'll post a link to the coupon code in the description section. I'll also pin one in the comments section if you want to pick up one of these on Amazon. Again, with the coupon codes, they come to about $1,100 before tax. So if you have any questions, please post those below. As always, be safe out there.